Okay. The, I guess practice test 5, the second half of the ZOC. Okay. Question 21. Which equation represents the line that's perpendicular? So let me get my little drawing thing here. So keyword perpendicular to the graph of this line that passes through this point. Okay. So a couple ways you could do this. You could figure out, put this in the y equals mx plus b format, figure out the slope, take the negative reciprocal, and then put it into point slope formula and figure out the equation. But it's much easier, and I think, since we know the point -2, 3 goes through our equation, then we can plug the point x equals -2, y equals 3 into each one of these equations and see which one works. And so if you just plug -2, 3 into each one of these equations, and whichever one it works in, that's your answer. All right, a club begins with 3 members. Each member brought 1 new member. Which function can be used to determine the number of members that began? Okay. So again, the easiest way is to think of this as, is this a linear or an exponential equation? Remember, linear has the x is to the power of 1. Exponential, the x is up in the, notice it's up in the exponents. So these two are exponential, the first two are linear. Well, since we're not adding the same number of members each month, because think about this. The first month, each member only brings in 3, because there's only 3 of them. But this second month, there's 6 members, and each one's bringing in 6. So it's increasing exponentially. Now, the second thing we know is that x equals 0. At the start of this, it began with 3 members, right? So we've narrowed it down to either C or D, right? Because those are the only 2 exponential equations. Now let's plug x equals 0 into here. Well, anything to the power of 0 is 1. So this first equation is going to say we started at 1.5. This D equation is going to say we started at 3, which is what we want. So a little bit unconventional, but that's the easiest way to do this one. Next one. Easy again, the easiest way is just set up a table. We know in 2010, Appleville had 1,000, Bridgetown had 4,000. Then in 2020, it tells us Appleville doubles. So from here to here, I just doubled it. And from here to here, I just added 100. And then in 2030, I doubled it. And I added 100. Up, Appleville's still not bigger. And then when we get to 2040, Appleville becomes bigger. Next one. Okay. Got 2 movie rentals. One gives a flat fee of $12.50 and then $1.50 for each movie rental. The second store charges $3.50 for each movie rental. So it says, so obviously early on, the first store is going to be more expensive, right? Because you got this flat fee. But as you do more and more rentals, the first store might become a pretty good deal. So it says, what's the minimum number of movies when the first store's cost is actually less than the second store? So I set them equal to 0 to see where sort of they equal out. And I solved for x, and I said it's 6.25 movie rentals. It's the same cost. So for it to be cheaper, it's 7 movie rentals. And then you can plug 7 back into these equations and 6 and make sure that it works. That on the 7th, the first store becomes less expensive than the second store. Let's see, question 30. Karen has a dog. So in other words, 2 ways to do this. Again, the easiest way is just to do some trial and error, right? Small dog, large dog. So I tried 5, and it says I got to add 1.4 because it weighs 1.4 more. So I tried 5 and 6.4, and it didn't total to 12.6. So I added a little more, 6 Got up a little too high, so it's got to be somewhere between 5 and 6. So I tried 5.4, and then I tried 5.6, and it worked. Now, the other way to do it is to say small dog, S equals small dog, S plus 4 equals the large dog, so S plus 1.4, the combined weight of the two equals 12.4. Solve for S, and you get 5.6. So either way will work, but if you get stuck, don't give up. You know, lots of times you can just do some trial and error and you can get the answer. Which choice would be modeled as a linear function? Okay, so we're working for some key words. Compounded is a interest rate. A percent is always going to be exponential, right? So this one's exponential. That's not linear. I can't put an E there. That's exponential. The monthly cost is in minutes at a rate of 4 cents per minute. So it's going up 4 cents, the same amount every single time. It's the same amount as opposed to a percent. 2/3 is a percent. 30%. So the one that's linear is this second one, all right? So key thing here is anytime it says a linear has to be the same amount you're either adding or subtracting. Percent's going to change, right? Because it's based on your base. 2/3 is going to change based on your base. 30% is going to change based on your base. So those are all exponential. All right, graph. This is just reading the graph where it's right here is where it's obviously increasing the fastest. All right, 29. The function represents the value of the ninth term in the sequence. What is the sum of the first and the fifth term? Well, all they're asking is a of 1 plus a of 5. So I plug a of 1 in here and I get -4. I plug a of 5 into our function, 3n minus 7, and I get 8. -4 plus 8 is a +4. Show the function, okay. Again, the easiest way to do this, what they want you to do is, you know, subtract the two functions and all that. But the easiest way is I know if, in order to be a solution, it's got to work in both of these functions. So I can take the first point, 5, -2, and I can put it in, does 5, -2 has to equal 0? Because what this is saying is that this x, the value y, is 0. And it's got to work in both equations. Well, this first one, -5, 0, does not work in f of x, so I can throw it out immediately. The second point, yep, it works in f of x. Now I got to make sure it works in g of x. Yep, it works in g of x, so good. And then the third point, does it work in f of x? Yes, it does, because when I plug 2 in for x, I get 35 for y in both f of x and g of x. So the two they want are these two right here. Table flown life expectancy. Okay. So you could use a graphing calculator, or you could just calculate the slope. Now, the key thing here is this is every 10 years, and they're asking for each year in these answers, right? So the first two we can throw out, because in 1930 it was much higher than 62, or yeah, and in 1930 it wasn't about 57, it was up to 69. So now it's the life expectancy increases. Well, every 10 years you can either calculate the slope or sort of eyeball. Every 10 years it's increasing by about 6. Every 10 years. So every year it's about 0.2. So the answer is D. So you could either use your calculator and calculate the slope, or you could, this one you could eyeball. But the key thing here is they're kind of a trick question, right? This is in 10-year increments, and they're asking you for a year. So you've got to take that slope and divide by 10 to get an annual rate. Okay, this is the biggest thing about standard deviation. So a few things about standard deviation is a measurement of how much dispersion or how it's kind of like the range, only a little different. So what they're getting at is, do I have something that looks like this, or do I have something that's very dispersed that looks like this? So this would have a large standard deviation, this second one, and this one had to have a smaller deviation. And the reason is because it's measuring how much deviation do I have around that mean or the middle point. So you can look at these, and the ones with the largest range, or C and D, have the largest range. But notice C also has these other ones that aren't exactly at the mean. D has all these ones right at the mean. So the one with the most dispersion, the greatest standard deviation, is going to be C. D, all right, what score does she need on the 5th test? Well, to get a 91, our total has to be 5 tests times 91. So she's got to have total points of 455. On the first 4, if you add these up, she's got, he or she, I guess it's Abby, she's got 365. So what they need on the last one is the 455 minus the 365. They need a 90 on the last one. All right, the perimeter of the triangle. So perimeter is just distance around. So they give us the total is 8.6. And if we subtract x plus 2 and subtract the other side, we'll get what this side is, right? By taking the total and subtracting this and subtracting this. The key is to make sure you distribute your negative sign, right, in both cases. So this is really a test of whether you can distribute that negative sign. All right, what is the solution of the equation 4x? Well, first thing you want to do is set this guy equal to 0 so we can factor it. So I subtracted 121 from both sides and got a 4x. Now here's a trick. Anytime you have a number in front of that x squared, think of taking out your greatest common factor, right? So does 4 go in? A good guess is to say, does 4 go into 52? Does 4 go into 48? And yes, it does. So I get 4 times x squared minus 13x plus 12. Now the 4 goes away because basically I just divided both sides by 4. So 4 over 4 is 1. And 0 divided by 4 is 0. So I simply get x squared minus 13x plus 12 equals 0. Now I'm looking for factors that multiply to a positive 12 and add to a negative 13. So negative 12 and negative 1 multiply to a positive 12 and add to a negative 13. So then I set each of these equal to 0 and I get x equals 12 and x equals 1, and that's answer D. This one's a tough one. All right. The length of the triangle. So the first thing they're asking us to do is the area of the rectangle plus the area of the triangle. All right. The rectangle, they say the length is 5 more than the width. So I said the width is equal to W, the length is equal to W plus 5. So the area of the rectangle is length times width, which would be W times W plus 5. The area of the triangle is 1/2 base times height. They tell us that the smaller leg is W and the larger leg is twice the length of the rectangle, which is 2 times W plus 5. So I get 1/2 W, I get this for the area of the triangle. So combining them, I get this. I simplify, I get this. This was a tougher one. All right. This one, you could get a graphing calculator and you would get this best fit equation. I don't know if you use a graphing calculator. And if you put in y of 3.5, you'd get 95. So that's answer C. Or if you're stuck, you could just kind of look at what did the other people that studied 3.5, and she scored about 2 points lower. So if you know how to use your graphing calculator and know how to put in a best fit equation, that's the best case. But I don't know whether they still require a graphing calculator for this. So this might be just an old question that they're going to throw out. All right. For some reason on this test, I love this perpendicular. So once again, they've given you an equation of a line it's perpendicular to. So I need to know I need to take the negative reciprocal of this guy, which is simply flip it and change the sign. So negative 1/3, I'll see if I can write here. I flip it and it becomes, my slope is 3. Oh, that's pretty ugly. So this first point is going to be 3x, my equation, and then I substitute in the point. I got my point slope. So y minus y1, they tell me the point, my first y is -10, and then my second point is 1, so I distributed the 3, I get 3x minus 3, and then I just solve and put it into y format, so I get y equals 3x minus 13. Two functions. Well, again, the easiest way in my view is just take each one of these answers and it's got to work in both equations where they intersect. So they have to be equal. So f of x has to equal to g of x. So does f of 22 equal g of 22? Well, you put it into the calculator. No, it doesn't. You get different answers. Same thing with f of -5. The one that works is f of 5. Marcus measured house. Okay. Correlation coefficient is basically asking, is there a correlation between these two? And there is. So a correlation coefficient close to 1 is a high correlation. Anything over 0.6 is usually considered high. So we know it's either A or B because there's a strong relationship. And what's happening here is the number of days increase, the height of the plants increase. Oh, excuse me, it says plants decrease. Sorry about that. So the right answer is A. So there's a strong relationship showing the number of days increases, the height of the plant increases. So it's not B, it's A. Okay, that's it. Thanks.